All right, welcome everyone to Mentor Monday, Finding Money, Building Partnerships, and Hustling. We are going to start off with a land acknowledgement. This winter evening, I reflect on this chilly yet wonderful land I am on today. As the snow continues to grace this land, I would like to say that I am incredibly grateful to be here on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The message that you see on the screen is geared towards Sheridan Edge specifically, but as these sessions are on a virtual platform, I urge everyone here to please visit Whose Land, where I will put it into the chat afterwards. This site will give you more information on whose land you are currently occupying. It is our responsibility to reflect and commit on our own understanding of the Indigenous peoples in your community, my community, and across Turtle Island. Please continue to acknowledge and reflect on the systemic oppression that caused and is continuing to cause so much suffering. Thank you. And now I'm going to pass it over to Lisa.
Hey everybody, welcome and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at Edge. We offer mentorship and learning programs. We have co-working space when we're not in the middle of COVID. We help people access funding programs. We provide inclusive support to impact entrepreneurs. And we work with the local ecosystem and help you access resources throughout the community, depending on the need that you have. Can you advance forward, Erica? Since we launched, which is now 3+ years ago, we've helped over 300 founders. We have 255 ventures that have come through our doors. 653 jobs have been created. There's been some 11,000 program participants. That means through our public programs. We have $8.4 million that have been invested in different ventures. And out of the ventures that we currently have, 73% of them are social enterprises and 80% of them are led by underrepresented founders. So we're a pretty diverse group at Edge, and we're all working on different things, but all with a community and social focus. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lisa Kember. I run the mentorship program at Edge, and I am really excited to bring Darren Perlman in today to be our Mentor Monday guest. And Darren, I've gotten to know pretty well because we've done a lot of work to support him and his co-workers through the last year or so as a venture within Edge. Darren, with his co-founder Daniel Copeland, launched a digital marketplace which serves as a missing middle to facilitate employers' direct access to on-demand, flexible workforces, as well as supporting inclusive hiring by connecting jobs to skills and training opportunities of marginalized groups in the existing labor market. That would include newcomers, Indigenous community members, and people with disabilities. Darren grew up in a family business, so he's no stranger to the entrepreneurial path. He worked with his father at Gene Machine and started at the floor level, eventually going on to run their operations. And he dealt with the ongoing challenges of staffing, and I'm sure he's going to tell you a little bit about that story today. It was there that the idea for Spot App was born. And so without further ado, let's welcome Darren to tell a little bit about his story.
Wow, what a great intro. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Erica. I'm really honored to be here and talk to everybody today. I'm just gonna share my screen here. So awesome, we'll jump right into it. So I'd like to start off with just the agenda. I'm going to discuss my journey. I've got a small little presentation to run through to give you that overview. We're We're going to have a fireside chat afterwards, and then there's going to be some Q&As. But really, everybody that's attending today, sorry, Eric, okay. The, what do you call it? Notification people in the waiting room came in. So sorry, I won't get distracted moving forward. In this journey overview, find one thing to grab onto. You'll see I'll touch upon a couple different things when it comes to money, when it comes to team, when it comes to the hustle. Find one thing, grab onto it, write it down, because this is what you're going to take away from this Mentor Monday. Ask those Q&As afterwards on what you grabbed onto, because I'd love to go into more detail. 95% of what I'm going to talk about today, you're probably going to forget about by the time you have dinner tonight. And one of my early mentors, told me that at the beginning, you're going to meet with hundreds of people and you're going to forget about everything that they tell you, but find those little nuggets to grab onto and hold onto, because that will set the course of your trajectory and you can learn from their mistakes. So learn something from what I'm going to talk about in my journey, ask more questions. We can get more into detail later. But a little advisory that my story is not your story. What I went through is not going to be what you go through necessarily. And the 3 reasons why, one, Spot is a marketplace. It's one of the most difficult businesses, especially from a startup perspective, to build, because you're dealing with 2 sides. Usually with most businesses, you just have to develop your product and go out and sell it. For us, we've got to go out, find customers that need people, need workers, and then go out and find those workers. So when it comes to money, there's a lot of challenges that I face that you might not face in your startup journey. And being a marketplace, Spot is not a lifestyle business. We got to continuously grow, because if there's ever a day or a week where we're not growing, it starts to kind of scare us where, have we plateaued? Have we reached our peak? What are we going to do to continue to grow? Because if we're not growing as a marketplace, you're dying. Think about Facebook. I know, recently they've had some challenges with their growth that for the first time in their history, in the last 15 years, they finally seen a decrease in users, but for 15 years before that, they were always increasing their business. And that's the same thing with the marketplace. You always have to continue to grow both sides if you want a sustainable business. And then last but not least is our social impact, the piece that makes us a social enterprise. It's very difficult to quantify because there are so many layers to it. This is what gets me excited, because when you look at DE&I from a whole, it's not just one solution to it. There's multiple tools that go into your toolkit. And that's what we're building Spot to be, that from a DE&I perspective, you can go in and pick and choose the tools that you need to access to make your business more corporate, socially responsible. So we'll get into that too later on, and definitely ask me more questions. As Lisa said, I came from a family-run business. It was G Machine. Grew up in it, loved what I did. This is a picture from one of our manager barbecues. And these were the managers that we had out in the field. We were Ontario based, 37 locations at our peak. And all the managers came in once a year for our manager's barbecue. Loved what I did. In 2017, the business was acquired by our bigger competitor, Comark, who was 20 times the size of G Machine. I got excited because I thought, I've grown up in that entrepreneurial business. Now I'll see what corporate life is like. The transition wasn't easy because everything becomes different. No longer are, your manager's people, everybody becomes a number there. And with the strike of a pen, your workforce could be decreased by 10% overnight. And you no longer have those stories because everything is done to really fall in line with the numbers. And corporate world was very stressful. In fact, it became so stressful that I suffer from Crohn's disease. It got so bad that I needed surgery. So I worked on my exit from corporate life, did not see a future with Comark. I didn't enjoy it. Retail was also changing at the time. So I found myself in a position where I wanted to start up a business, and everybody was asking me, well, why start a business now? Why do something different? Here's a little picture. This was literally 2 months before my surgery. You can see I was not healthy at the time. I had a son that was 1.5 years and my wife was pregnant, about to give birth again. I was going in for surgery, but I was determined. I need to start a new business. I need to do something different because I wanted to find purpose in my life. I wanted to help individuals and I wanted to ensure that people were no longer numbers. They were people again, and that they had access to rewarding careers that everybody had a fair chance at getting. So that comes down to the passion which drives the company that I founded at Spot. And the analogy or metaphor that I give is that speedboat versus a cruise ship. The corporate world is like a cruise ship. You know, you have one job to do within the cruise ship to make sure that the boat moves forward. But as a startup, you're in a speedboat. You're in full control. You get to do what you want. And, you know, think about the Titanic. The Titanic was maybe 1/4 the size of this cruise ship. And when they were on that trajectory to hit that iceberg, they had 45 seconds and it took 12 people to try to not only stop the boat, but steer the boat away from the iceberg, and they couldn't do it. They still hit it. If you were in a speedboat, you could have stopped that boat before the iceberg. You could have easily maneuvered your way around it, probably driven around the iceberg a few times, and then continued on. And that's why I wanted to get back into the startup entrepreneurial lifestyle, because I wanted to be in control. I wanted to drive that speedboat and get things done very fast. In a corporate world, if you have an idea, you know, you got to bring it up at your next monthly strategy meeting. Maybe it's in 2 months' time, and then it gets put on the agenda, it gets discussed, and it might be a year before that idea takes action. But in your speedboat, if you have an idea, you want to go somewhere, you could do it that afternoon. And that's what we do at Spot. We are moving so fast, and it fuels the passion every morning when I wake up. And so the first thing to address in a startup is money. You have your startup costs, your runway for the business, and your personal runway, which I put in that yellow circle because a lot of people do not consider it. When you look at startup costs, you've got your incorporation costs, your website domain, bank account, legal and tax. You're going to do surveys, information gathering, try to get a couple of your first customers before your product's even launched. And so a lot of people consider these. There are a lot of hacks. You know, your website domain is usually free for the first year, 99 cents. Your bank account, you might use a personal account for your first year before switching to a business account. Legal and tax, there's a lot of boilerplates that you can download online for free. The most important cost is your incorporation cost. People overlook it. They say, I'm going to incorporate later on, once I have a viable business, once I've proven out my concept. My advice to you today is do this as soon as possible, because there are a lot of benefits at incorporating early on. And we'll talk about those in a bit. It was probably one of the smartest decisions at Spot that we made, that we incorporated when we did. And I will tell you why soon. The next thing to consider is your runway for the business. Eventually, a lot of these setup costs will turn into ongoing software as a subscription cost. You have your server hosting, your research and development. You're going to land up hiring an employee, maybe 2 employees. You have more subscriptions that come in for, you know, your email, HubSpot for your CRM, Twilio for messaging through text messages. You have advertising costs. And my partner calls this death by 1,000 needles, because at first it doesn't seem like a lot. Your first email is, you know, $5 a month, but then you add on a second and a third and $15 a month. And then your HubSpot, eventually that goes up to $100 a month. And so all these costs add on very quickly. A lot of them, you know, try to delay as much as possible. You can get away using, you know, free email host software subscriptions. You don't necessarily need Gmail right away, but eventually you do as you continue to scale. There's also other hacks with startup credits that a lot of these companies offer. Your first year with HubSpot is 90% off, which makes it very affordable, and you can unlock some very powerful tools. But remember, the day that you turn it on, you have 1 year before that 90% goes away. And then your second year is only 50% off. It might seem like a good discount, but you go from paying, you know, $100 a month to whatever it comes out to, $750 a month. It adds up very, very quickly. So delay turning on any subscriptions as long as possible. Try to do things manually. And then as the business continues to grow, that's when you turn on the runway costs. A lot of companies call it your burn rate. And if you keep those under control, you're going to do well. The last component of money, which a lot of people don't consider, is that personal runway. As a rule of thumb, you're always told as an entrepreneur, make sure that you can live without income for 1 year. And initially, I did that with Spot. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have an income for a year. But then as I was meeting with a lot of VCs and angel investors, I realized that being in a marketplace, it's going to be a little bit harder to raise money than what I thought. And so very quickly, I redid all my calculations and I made sure that I was going to be okay if there was no income for 3 years. And it's a scary thing to think about because there's a lot of ongoing costs that you have. You've got to have a pretty good nest egg to live off of if you want to do this right. Because the last thing you want to do is be in your business and after 6 months, 9 months, or a year, realize you can't go on. You might be onto something and it might be just a few more months away before you hit that critical mass. But if you cannot sustain yourself, you have to give up. And unfortunately, that's what happens to a lot of early startups. They get very close to making it to that next level, but they can't sustain themselves personally. They can't pay their mortgage. They can't pay their rent. They get tired of mustard sandwiches. That's what I did the very first year that we were working in my partner's basement So at the basement of his apartment, we were using the common room there. And every day for lunch, we'd go into the Longos that was next door. We'd buy either a loaf of bread or if we wanted to splurge, a really nice roll, and we'd find mustard. A sandwich would cost anywhere between 15 cents to 95 cents. And that was our meal for the day. There's no takeouts or restaurants anymore because all your money is going into your business. Getting Zoom bombed here. Sorry about that.
That's so awesome.
And the most important thing is you want to reinvest that money back into the business. We're at a stage where, my partner and I could take a very small salary, but if we did, then that would hamper our growth rate, that the amount of jobs that we could create would be hampered. That extra 5 jobs that we could get to next month wouldn't be there because we were taking out the money. So that also plays into our no income for 3 years, that we're building up that critical mass. So it comes to raising sources. This is a question everybody always asks as that entrepreneur. Well, where is the money going to come from? And there's really 4 avenues that you need to look at: the angels, the grants, subsidies, and venture capitalists. And I've put together this little table of kind of what it looks like. You have dilution. So that's how much of your company you have to give up, how much equity, shares, angels. Usually it's a good source for very quick money. They'll take anywhere from 10 to 20% of your company. It really depends on how good of a story you can tell the angel groups and the angel networks. You sell them a dream, you'll be able to give up a lot less equity for their money. With angels, you are able to take a personal salary, you build that into your raise, but it's going to be very minimal. Angels are not, investing $100,000 so you could take a $100,000 salary. You'll get away with maybe putting in 30, 40,000 baseline, but you can build it up from there. Your time commitment, it's, give it 80 hours over 16 weeks. It's going to be heavy at the beginning when you're meeting with a lot of different angels. And then eventually you move into due diligence, where it's a little bit more targeted and you spend a little bit less time with them. And it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 6 months to close your angels. You'll have different term sheets that you'll use depending on what the group is or what the individual is. You have grants. That's my favorite because there's no dilution there. You're able to take a bit of a personal salary at fair market. So it's not necessarily a bit. If you're doing some heavy execution, then you can take a heavier salary. The only issue here is the time commitment. You're looking at very heavy within 3 weeks because there's deadlines on these grants. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled out. So it could be anywhere from 60 plus hours within 3 weeks. And then it takes a long time for these decisions to be made on grants, anywhere from 6 to 18 months. And your chances of getting them are probably less than 5%. So it's high risk, high reward in terms of your time commitment. Subsidies are the easiest, and tax credits, no dilution there. Usually you can't take a personal salary. It's for hiring students or for hiring youth to come in and work full time. Very short time commitment. It'll take a couple hours over multiple weeks to get your paperwork in and get it the approval. And the turnaround time is really quick. And then finally, VCs. This is where the big money comes in. However, with big money comes big dilution. It can be as high as 45% from some of the VCs I've spoken to. You are able to take a personal salary. Your time commitment is going to be huge because you're meeting with tons of VCs. It's you're really going out there and hunting. You're going through all the grounds, and then eventually you're going to find a VC that you like and they like you. And it can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months from the initial contact period to doing the due diligence to closing your term sheet. And then I'm going to quickly get into only 3 more slides, and then we can jump into the fireside chat. But building partnerships, there's 3 types of partnerships here. You've got your startup partnerships. It starts out with regional innovation centers. Think Caltech, Mars, Communitech. And this is where any startup should start, because the regional innovation centers are funded by the government to help any entrepreneur looking to start up a business. So put in your application. They're going to have resources. They're going to have information sessions, toolkits that you can access, startup credits as well. And that is a first foundation. And then the next startup partnership is the incubators. That's where Edge came in. DMZ is another one. And this is really the next step of your evolution. They start putting you in contact with mentors, with experts within the field to help you develop your sales strategy, your marketing strategy, make more introductions. And then the last startup partnership is to look for the accelerator programs. And this is when you're about ready to launch. Spot went through an accelerator at the beginning of COVID, the Launch YU accelerator, and it did wonders for us. It put us on a trajectory 6 months into the future that really got us ready to go live. And one important thing, never pay for membership in any of these partnerships. They're all for free from the Regional Innovation Center up to the accelerator. Sometime there might be a minimal fee to make sure that you're committed to the program. They might charge you $100, and if you don't show up to any of the meetings, you lose that investment. But anybody that's pitching you $1,000 to enter their accelerator program and promising you the world of investment, don't buy into it. They're salespeople and they're selling a product. The government here in Canada and Ontario do an amazing job providing these resources for free. And I'm sure that's why a lot of the individuals here today are here to learn more about the Edge program as an incubator to support your startup. The next type of partnership is sales partnerships. These come in forms of associations. Every company is usually part of at least one association, if not multiple associations. And then even the associations are memberships of associations. And this is a top-down approach that if you can build a partnership with an association, you can reach multiple customers. Then you have chambers of commerces. Those are really hit or miss. Some are really good depending on the area and who's in charge of that chamber, but they can make introductions to potential customers. You have networking events. Keep an eye out. They're happening all the time. Lisa runs an awesome networking event if you're ever lucky enough to get an invite to her networking breakfast. And then you have conventions. Hopefully they come back soon. Look out for them. Some of them are free. Others do have a cost to it. But there's usually government grants to help startups cover those costs. And through your incubator, sometimes there's discounted tickets. Conventions can be hit or miss, but it's good to get your name out there and it's good to be on the track. And then the last partnership is really those champions, the people that are really going to support you. They come in forms of genuine supporters, people that either love you as a founder or love the idea that you're working on. Keep them close because they're very much cheerleaders. They're going to help you in, they're going to be there for the ups, but they're also going to be there for the downs to continue motivating you. One of the great tools that you could use is a newsletter to keep everyone updated on your progress and any milestones that you hit. Other champions are mentors. They're great because as a founder, sometimes you get tunnel vision what you're doing, and to have check-ins. Lisa, for the first 6 months, I was having weekly check-ins with her because she was helping me get out of that tunnel that I was in and seeing other areas. Eventually, it runs its course where having weekly meetings with your mentor isn't as great as having bi-weekly, because then there's more of an agenda that you could build up. So you don't need to meet with mentors too often, but meet with them regularly. And then you have advisors. Those are really just experts in the field that you're working in. If maybe you're not an expert in employment law, so you have an advisor that can answer a question as they come up. Maybe marketing is not your expertise, so you have that advisor that you can go to. And the one caution I put out there, a lot of people make this mistake. I've had a lot of colleagues do this, that mentors and advisors kind of hold them hostage to a board seat. They say, yeah, I'll be your mentor, I'll be your advisor, but you have to put me on your board immediately. But the truth is, a board seat is really meaningless for a startup because you haven't gone anywhere. Your board really comes in after you do a substantial raise. I'm not talking friends and family, I'm not talking seed. Once you hit a Series A, that's when you develop a board, and that's when the seats are actually more meaningful. And the people that stick around and help you on your journey at the very beginning are going to be the ones that you want to give those seats to when the time is right and it's there and you're forming your board, because they know you, they know your business better than anyone else, and they're going to add a lot of value to that. So that's where your network partnerships come in. Make sure you're diligent about it. Keep that CRM, whether it's HubSpot or your Excel sheet, of all your different champions, mentors, and advisors, and keep them up to speed with what's going on with your business. And then you have your teamwork. This is really coming from the team that you surround yourself with. Think about your employees. 50% of your success is going to come from having the right people working with you. They're going to be the ones taking a lot of work off your plate that you can focus on some bigger picture ideas. You got to make sure that trust and dedication is there for a successful team. A question that I love to ask, it's hypothetical, and a lot of the times I don't ask it anymore. But at the beginning I did. Would you come work for me for free? If a potential employee says yes, that there's a level of trust and dedication, because they're going to get something out of this job that's worth more than money to them. They're going to get the experience, they're going to get exposure, they're going to get learnings that they're willing to commit themselves without a paycheck to learn about this. But we understand that nobody's going to work for free in today's market. And that's why it's that hypothetical question that, as long as I feel that the answer is yes, I don't care what that person's experience is. I know that they're going to bring that trust and dedication to the table. So I'm going to hire them so that they can be part of that 50% of my success. And the last thing to know as an entrepreneur is your employees, you're paying them more than what you're getting paid. So don't waste your time. If somebody's not working out, if they're not pulling their weight, you have to move on. You have to find their replacement. You cannot stay married to somebody that is not adding to your success, because they're just taking food off your own table. And then it comes down to the hustle. And this is most important with any startup. Time is money. You've got your runway of your personal costs. You've got your runway for the business costs. Competition, they're ready to eat you alive. So every day you're fighting against these three things. And that leads to the burnout. Burnout is a real thing to watch out for. All the pressure will buckle you at times. And a lost day is very costly. Sometimes a lost day turns into a lost week. And that can kill your business, especially with that personal runway. So it comes back full circle that you've got the highs of startup life. It's like nothing else. It's the biggest joy in the world. It's why people become entrepreneurs, because they want to feed off of that energy of doing something great and getting some success. The lows are terrible. I can tell you firsthand, there's been some days where I think, why did I start Spot? If we lost a customer said no, there was an issue with, a worker, whatever it might be, it's crushing. You have the whole weight on your shoulders and you're always on the verge of burnout. But passion is that constant, that as long as you started the company because you wanted to do something great, then you'll get through all of it. A lot of people that start a business to make money, they're going to fail. They're never going to make it to the end because money is not a real passion. You got to find something more than just the money to be successful. And you need to be ready to risk everything. Think about that slide before, the personal runway of going 3 years without earning a salary. If you're prepared to do that, then you have the passion to make this successful. And after some time, it might not be 3 years, maybe after 6 months, after 8 months, you'll find that money. You'll develop those partnerships. You'll build the team to support you. And most importantly, you'll have that hustle to take you to the next level. So that's my journey. I hope everybody, wrote down that one piece that they're going to take away, ask some questions on it. I'm always here to connect, very approachable. Drop me an email, Darren@spotapp.co. We can chat one-on-one. We're expanding our team this summer. We're at 18 right now. By October, this company is going to be 40 people. So we are looking to hire some really dedicated people. Please hit me up if you're interested in working at Spot. Don't worry, it won't be for free. We will get you paid. And with that, let's jump into it, Lisa.
Darren, that was fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. I'm so glad you're talking about the hustle a little bit because I mean, there's nobody that hustles more than you and your team. But it's something that I've often wondered, and I mean, we've chatted about a little bit at different points, but that hustle can be, and yes, you're driven by passion, but it's always a balancing act, right? Between, how much do you hustle, how much do you drive yourself from passion, and then how much do you recognize your own physical and emotional and mental health needs, right?
It's a good question. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not that well connected with my emotional needs. I'm a very analytical person. And so if you give me a math problem, I could sit there for hours trying to get to the answer. And that's how I view business. What we're building at Spot App is addressing a huge social inequality. And that's what I want to solve here. And so that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what keeps me at my desk for 10 hours on Zoom the entire day with everybody, since we don't have a physical presence. It's all virtual. I do make it a point to get away from my computer for at least 2 hours between 5 and 7, to have dinner with the kids, play with them, put them to bed, and then I'm back at my computer from 8 to 11, wrapping up everything. So I'm probably not the expert at emotional wellness, but it is very important. There's times where I do feel it building up. I do have those deep one-on-ones with people I can confide in, get it out there, but they're better people to speak to about the emotional well-being to prevent that burnout. I do know other individuals that have experienced, had to walk away from their startups for either a few weeks or a few months while they got everything back in check, and then they were able to jump back into it. So for everybody, there's a different equilibrium of balance and ensuring that hustle is there. Just for me, it's slightly different.
You're in an interesting time in life because you're building a startup, but you've also got a young family. So in a way, that puts a tremendous extra strain on you, but maybe at the same time, because you're taking that 5 to 7 window, which we've gobbled up today, but because you're taking that 5 to 7 window, you're also taking some chill time each day, maybe more than some entrepreneurs. So
it's tough because the pressure's coming from both ends. Kids are very expensive. Nobody told me that before. And then there's other added pressures, like my mortgage needs to be paid. I've got to put food on my table. So that runway, when I had to do those calculations, the whole family, had to kind of make some sacrifices. But we all saw what the light at the end of the tunnel was, that not only are we going to help society and our community, but we can build something really special. And, there's a good business to be had here as well. And we're almost at that stage. We're almost at that critical mass. And I can't wait for the day when I get my first paycheck from this company.
It's a very exciting time you're in, for sure. You set out to build a social enterprise. And I'm sure along the way you've learned a lot. But what do you know today that you wish you knew a year ago, let's say, a year and a half ago?
That's a really good question. So with the social enterprise, there's multiple layers to it. And, defining what your social impact is, I had an idea at the beginning of what a social enterprise was, but then once I started doing research, I started, uncovering all these layers. So you have your B Corp certification that you could pay for, and that's a level of defining your social enterprise. You can look at the, I forget what it's called, the UN.
Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes, thank you. Sustainable Development Goals, and define one on there. You're, as a social enterprise, you definitely need to work on your theory of change, of what your impact is and how you're going to get there. That missing middle piece. So all those things, the advice that I would give is probably start off with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Identify one of those goals that is meaningful to your startup, and use that to direct your path. Then start developing your theory of change, which is going to be updated 100 times over the first year, but it's going to draw a very good map of where you need to get to and how you're going to get there.
You talk about the speedboat and sort of moving fast, and it gives you full control, but you also, as you've grown and grown quickly, you've bumped into, I'm sure, situations where you're not fully in control because you've got funders or you've got people who've invested, where you have to be accountable to them in some way. So how do you still remain nimble while you're addressing the needs of those people who are making an investment in your vision?
You guys are recording me here. Short answer is
we edit this piece out.
I'm very lucky that the partner that I have in this company, we're almost like polar opposites. He is the cruise ship driver, I'm the speedboat driver. So when it comes to the accountability piece and some of the uncharted waters, we'll take the cruise ship in that, and he can sail that. And when it comes to the sales and building the partnerships and developing some of our DE&I goals, that's the speedboat that I'm in. So we've got that good dichotomy that we work on together.
That's awesome, actually, because you need that sort of stability, that stable growth at the same time as you're accelerating forward and responding to opportunities. Yeah,
for sure. And that also goes with building partnerships. Sometimes a one-person venture, it's not enough. You need the team around you to support you. So finding a like-minded individual, I think 2 is the perfect number. 3 is also great, but anything more than 3 in terms of founders, those businesses usually don't make it past the first year or even second year, because then there's a lot of friction and fighting amongst the founders. So 2 to 3 is the good core, good stable number. 1 might be too small.
Especially for something like this, where you've got all the different tentacles to the business, right? Let's
Definitely.
call them. I'm going to open it up to questions in just 1 minute, but just before I do, one more question for Darren, from my perspective. Who's been the biggest impact on you in building the business to this point?
That's a good question. I mean, there's so many individuals that have contributed in one way or another. And because of all the different layers, I don't think there's one individual that really stands out. But everybody all together, I've met with literally 1,000 people, if not more, since the beginning of this venture, the journey that I've been on. And every single person that I've had a meaningful conversation with, in that, they answered an email and they said, yeah, I'll jump on Zoom, I'll have a virtual coffee. There was always one bit of information. And, maybe that's something I didn't talk about in my presentation. Never turn down a meeting, because you never know what's going to come out of it. It could be somebody that is, not an expert in your field, has no connections in what you're doing, can't relate to your story at all. Might not even speak the same language as you, but you never know. If they're willing to meet with you, then there's something there. And yeah, some people are just going to waste your time. But for the most part, you're going to find individuals that are able to help you, support you, give you guidance. And I've been fortunate enough that there's been dozens, if not hundreds of those individuals along this journey that have kept me going. And whether they are an official mentor, an advisor, or just a colleague who might be doing something in parallel, something similar that we can bounce ideas off of. I can learn from their mistakes. They can learn from my mistakes, and it just makes you better. So surround yourself with that community.
Okay, but that leads to a secondary question. That is this: at Edge, we often see entrepreneurs who are spinning a little bit as they're developing their idea, because every time they have a meeting with somebody, they're almost like sent in a new direction. So how do you sort of stay the course at the same time as you're gathering and using the information? How do you sort of filter out what's, not necessarily aligned and bring in what is valuable?
That's the challenge with iterating, because you can go in those different directions as you get more advice, and you see different nuggets, different prosperous roads. I think what it comes down to is something that cannot be trained. It's that spidey sense. If you feel it, if you think there's something there, then you got to chase after it. You could be wrong, and if you are, then at least there's other paths that you can go down. You iterated so many times to get there, you can almost rewind, go back a level and go back to that node that you were at before you went down there and go that other direction. But as an entrepreneur, you've got to trust your spidey sense, that inner intuition that's telling you this is a good idea, or customers who said, these are my pain points, this is the solution I'd like to see. And if you're listening to them, then that's the right path to go down. And at Spot App, we've iterated a couple dozen times in terms of our overall strategy. But each iteration was done with reason. We thought it out. Some of them we thought out very quickly, that they were overnight decisions made. But we've been lucky that our intuition was right and we were on the right track. Not all decisions made were correct. There were some that were a waste of time or a waste of resources. But we were able to go back and go down the right path. And I'm a firm believer that, everything happens for a reason. The people that you come into contact with, the decisions that you make, will play itself out in the long course, as long as you're there for the long run. If you're only in it for the short run, you're not going to know what that plan is. But everything eventually comes full circle.
That's awesome. So we're going to open it up for questions. If you have questions, since we're a pretty large group tonight, I'm going to ask that you use your reaction button and just raise your hand so I can call on you. Or if you want to just type the question in the chat, that's okay too. And then I can just ask the question for you. I would ask that if you're asking your question by raising your hand, that you do turn your camera on if at all possible. Reginald, do you have a question?
No, actually, I'm just applauding Darren. I really appreciate everything he had to say, and I've been sitting here reflecting on my own experience, as a founder of a business myself. I've actually founded a couple of them, and man, he is spot on. Everything he said, I appreciate, right down to his young kid walking into the scene, because I have found that that's a part of the deal too. You got to make room for everything, and it's amazing how many times I've heard answers that I needed come out of the mouths of my grandkids. So really, really grateful for everything you said, Darren, and bravo, well done.
Awesome.
Thanks, Reginald.
Thanks so much. Mohammed, you have a question?
Hi there. Thank you, Darren, for this great presentation. It was really interesting to learn a lot of things. I had one question. There was a focus on like, networking and like doing it properly and meeting the right people and like gaining connections. Is there such a thing as too much networking when you put too much emphasis on that without really, on, maybe having a better idea or better understanding of what type of business you want to run, and then you focus more on the networking part of it? Is that something that you need to think about at all?
It's a good question, Mohammed, because I'm a firm believer that there's never too much networking. The world is, I've lost count. Is it 7 billion, 8 billion people? And you think about your tribe. Your tribe is usually about 10 people. You've got 10 very close friends. You've got 10 secondary friends that you can go after. So your own internal network is usually very small. So you got to get out there and you got to meet new people, because then you get introduced to their tribes, and all of a sudden, the network that you're tapping into grows exponentially. Before starting Spot, I thought I knew a lot of people, but when I look back at all the different meetings, which HubSpot is a great tool for, because every email you send out, it tracks those individuals. So I can go and see all the people that I've had touch points with. And where I think, the answer is that you've met too many people is if you can't utilize some of those good resources that you've met with, if you can't follow up with them, if there's no asks for those individuals, that you meet somebody that could add value to what you're doing, could provide you with a little bit more context, or introduce you to somebody else that might be in the field of what you're doing, then you're meeting too many people because you've lost control. Having that newsletter is really important, that you're engaging with your network. But also, some of the more important individuals, you got to pick up the phone once a month and have a check-in with them and let them know, hey, this is where I'm at. Maybe next month we can sit down for a coffee if Starbucks is open. If not, let's do a virtual coffee. And let me give you an update on what we're doing. And I'm going to have 2 asks of you in that meeting. And getting yourself structured that way, that's where your network is going to add a lot of value. But if you're going into a convention and you're going to meet 100 people, but you don't know what those 100 people are going to add value to, then it might be a bit of a waste of time. That you're going to hand out a bunch of cards and you're not going to hear back from anyone. So always have those takeaways. Whenever you meet anybody new, hey, who can you introduce me to? Hey, can you provide me feedback on this? Hey, I want you to go through some of my wireframes and just let me know, do you like what you see as a consumer? Then you're getting value out of everybody you're networking.
Thank you very much.
Are you good, Mahar? Did you have another question?
I was thinking like formulate how would I formulate it, but basically the question would be from like what I'm getting is that I guess the way you can think about it is like there's multiple stages to running a business and start having a startup, and maybe would networking be like more better if you had like different stages to how you would network as well? Maybe when you're first starting off the business, you would have like a certain way of approaching people about your business. And then if you're in the next stage of like expanding, how you would network yourself. Are there different approaches to that as well in terms of growing your business?
I'm going to answer your question with a question. What stage are you at, Mohammed?
Right now, I'm just still at the creation of the idea. I'm still thinking about the market and like how I would approach having something to actually get people to buy my product or get in contact with me about it.
So do you have a product yet, or an idea of what that product is, or are you still searching for more ideation?
I'm searching for more ideation, because like the more research I do about the market, the more I'm realizing that maybe I might have to get a product that's has more to offer rather than be too similar to what's already in there in the market. So that's where I'm at right now.
So then, I guess, looking at, where you're at in your journey right now, for your purposes of networking, you're going to want to go after people that either are using a similar product and, find out what are your pain points of using this product right now. Because that's going to help you identify what does your new product need to be, because if it addresses those pain points, you know that they're going to sign up, buy your product, buy your service, because you're addressing their pain points. So that's the type of networking you need to start with, is current users. And then once you develop that idea, then you want to start getting some validation from others. Would you use this product? How much would you pay for it? How often are you going to use it? Once a month, once a year, every single day? Because then you can start building out your total addressable market, your go-to-market strategy. And then your next set of meetings and networking is going to see how you get your product out there, how you're going to build your marketing channels, maybe start doing a bit of fundraising that you can do a friends and family round or a seed round. So I think you're definitely on the right path, that it comes in different stages. Really depends where you're at with the business. But put together your vision board of where you need to get to, where you are today, and who you need help from along those ways. So you know who to target. Because the most important thing, and that's why I put up in the startup costs, is doing those surveys, getting participants to give you that feedback, because that's where your validation is going to come from. You cannot build a product and expect people to come to it. It's like Field of Dreams. If I build it, they will come. It doesn't happen in today's market. It's just so big and so global that the idea that you have, probably 100 people have already tried before you and they failed for a reason. You got to identify what that reason was, because then you know what to do differently on your path and your journey.
All right. Thank you very much.
No problem, Mohammed. Good luck.
Thank you.
So maybe ask the question in the chat, how do you push through burnout?
That's a tough one. I think for everybody, it's a unique answer. For some people, they just need to go outside and get 20 minutes of fresh air, whether it's in the middle of summer or the middle of winter, and that, renews them. Other people, sometimes you just need to disconnect for 48 hours. There was definitely a burnout phase that I had in December. I was fortunate enough that, my wife kind of saw it, and she's like, okay, let's grab the kids. Let's go up to, I'm trying to remember the city. It's where Santa's Village is, not Huntsville, Bracebridge. Yes. Thank you, Lisa. We went to Bracebridge for the day, and I was totally disconnected. There's Wi-Fi service, there's cell phone service up there, but I wasn't checking emails. It was too cold to pull the phone out of the pocket, but it got me away from my computer. And I think definitely I was talking to Erica about this. I like to use BC terminology, before COVID. So in BC times, it was a lot easier to avoid burnout because you were still commuting. You had 45 minutes on the bus or subway. You could listen to some songs, listen to an ebook. But after BC, AC, call it, burnout is a lot easier because you're sitting at home. I mean, I spend 10 to 14 hours a day in this little box of an office in front of my computer, and burnout's a lot easier. So I don't have the magical answer of how to avoid burnout in COVID. Hopefully, as things open up, there's going to be more opportunity to just get away from that computer, get away from the phone, and burnout will be a lot less. But it's also surrounding yourself with supporters, that if you have that low, if you lost a big customer, if your product launch wasn't as successful as you thought, if it's taking a little bit longer to get to your goals, go back to your network that you can ask them for feedback, or ensure that you're not doing anything wrong. It's not you, it's something else that's happening. Maybe they can give you some other ideas and pull you out of that slump.
100%. There's a question in the chat. How and where do you look for investors in the gold mining industry? Any thought on that?
The gold mining industry.
A little unrelated to your business, but maybe you've bumped into people along the way.
No, I'd love to get into that industry because you find gold.
Yeah.
You're great. So what I would recommend is there's a lot of publications out there of, gold mining companies and who their backers are, which banks, with which VCs. You can also open up any publication. I know recently I've seen a lot of bankruptcies of gold mining companies. They've had a tough time, and you can see who they're indebted to, who financed them, and start to build up your list through there. And then through regional innovation centers like Mars, once you're a member of the network or the community, they can do more concrete research that if you tell them, I'm looking to raise funds and these 5 firms have provided financing to similar companies in my industry, can you do a little bit more research and find out who's similar in the funding space as these companies? You can also give them some of your competitors. If they've raised any funds, they can go back and go to the pitch book, see who invested in them, and then they can provide you more detailed list of investors.
May I suggest you might also want to look at Natural Resources Canada. There's a number of different investment programs within NRCan that are geared for this sector. And I guess it depends on whether you're talking technology focused or whether it's more research focused. I don't really know, but there's different programs available there. Hopefully that was helpful. Priya, you've got your hand up.
Hi, yes. I'm just turning my camera on. I was trying to turn my camera on. Okay, thank you, Darren. Your session was really informative. I just have one quick question. So as soon as you incorporate your business and you start talking to people about your business, you might come across many friends or families who wants to be a part of business. And my first question is, how do you keep your personal, circle and professional circle separate? And second question is that, how do you add your friends or somebody in your family as partners? And what are some of the factors that you should consider while adding them as partners?
Yeah, some really good questions. The first thing that you have to establish with any friends or family that are looking to invest in your company is you have a clear discussion with them. This money that you're investing could be lost tomorrow, that it's not a guaranteed return. And are you okay with losing this money? Will you hate me forever if you never see a penny of this again? Similarly, that this investment you're making is going to be locked up for the next 5 to 10 years. Are you okay with that? Because it's not easy to pull your money out once it's invested in an early stage startup. And so if the answers are yes, you can have a more meaningful conversation. Usually with friends and family, what their socioeconomic background is, that, can they afford it? If they're writing you a check for $50,000 and that they're only earning $40,000 a year, they can't afford that. And they shouldn't do it, because they might think, well, I see all these other people investing in startup companies and they turn $50,000 into $1 million. That's what I want to do. And then I can retire. But it's very, very risky. So you got to make sure that, A, they can afford it, B, they're okay with losing it, and C, it's not going to hamper your relationship with them, that you land up losing a friend or lose a family member that never wants to speak to you again. Because unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, the odds are stacked against you. There's a higher likelihood that you're going to fail versus succeeding. And anybody that's investing in you has to be okay with that. And that's why the angel groups are usually better. Priya, you did remind me, I forgot to mention why you want to incorporate early on. The reason for that is with a lot of these grants, subsidies, you have to be incorporated, and some of them require you to have at least 2 years of history, of operational history. So if you've been working on an idea, you've been working on the ideation for a year and you haven't incorporated, well, you lost a year of actual work that you were doing, that the government would recognize or the banks would recognize that you've been working on this idea. So it is a high upfront cost, around $400 to $600, depending on who you use to do the incorporation, but sometimes it can be worth it. And for us, it was definitely worth it because there were grants that we were able to apply to this year that we now had 2 years of history behind us, based off of our incorporation date. And Priya, sorry, there was one other question you asked about raising from friends and family.
Yeah, so when we add them as like partners, all right, into our business early on, what are some of the factors that we need to consider, before adding them as partners?
So it comes down to a partnership agreement that you have to be very clear with anybody what the expectations are, what they're bringing to the table, what they're going to be held accountable against. And if it's in black and white writing, then if you bring me on as a partner and I'm not working out, you can go back to that shareholders agreement. You can say, Darren clearly states here, you were going to go out and find financing for this company, and a year later, you haven't brought a penny to the table. You haven't held up your end of the bargain. We cannot continue with this partnership. So all those factors, there's a lot of great shareholder agreements that you could find online, boilerplates that you can download for free. Do a little bit of research on the things that you need to consider in a partnership, of what it looks like, how you're going to be held accountable. Maybe you have a mentor or an advisor that you have bi-weekly, monthly check-ins with that hold both parties accountable. And then also, nobody likes to talk about it, but it's almost like your prenuptials. What happens if you get divorced? If the partnership doesn't work out, is there a buyout? Is there a shotgun clause? Does the other partner just become a silent partner, that they're no longer active in the business? Do they lose any of their voting shares? So all things that you have to kind of draw out. And at the time, it's going to be a lot easier to do it now versus 6 months or a year's time if there is a falling out and you have to work on that plan B. I've seen other startups that just get dissolved because the partners cannot work out on an exit strategy. They've been fighting with each other, and there's no continuation to that business.
I've seen it happen years down the road too, right? So,
Thank you so much.
No problem. Priya.
There's a question in the chat here. I guess passion is the main driving force for hustle, but how do we find something we're passionate about, and how do we find people who are like-minded on that passion?
It's a good one. The passion, comes out of what gets you excited, what gets you out of bed in the morning. For everyone ticks differently, and it comes down to money. Some people that they'll call their passion, that the drive, the thirst for attaining money is what their driver is. But I think you need to get a little bit deeper. Maybe it's being successful is the passion, and money comes with success. And if that's your passion, you will build something that you are successful, and success has different measures. So whether it's building a company to achieving $1 million in sales or $1 million in profit, or maybe success is having 30 employees within your organization. But you got to find that thing that really is that ticker, that if somebody says it to you, you gain interest. If you see it on TV, you're going to put down your phone and watch it. The answer might not be clear. It sometimes takes months, if not years, to find out what your passion is, but you got to try different things to discover. It's almost like a hobby. If you don't have a hobby today, that doesn't mean you're not interested in anything. It just, you haven't found that right hobby yet. So same thing with passion. Go out there, start reading books on other successful individuals and what drove them to become successful. And maybe that will resonate with you and drive that passion out. How to find it with other people? Well, I think it's in the conversations that you're going to have. And very early on, you can tell if somebody's passionate about what you're passionate about, because you lose track of time. You don't need a whole page of questions to structure how your meeting's going to go or structure your interview. It's like two peas in a pod. You hit off immediately, and you guys vibe. And that's when you tell if that other individual has passion that matches your passion. They become your new best friend.
So this, Rahel, I do see your hand up. I'm just going to ask one other question from the chat here. Somebody's asking, it's kind of like the stock market then, people investing in your business, where you aren't really guaranteed to gain more. You could go up or down. Is that how you describe it?
Well, no investment's ever guaranteed. I think we've all been lucky with the stock market continuously going up, but that's if you diversify your investments. You know, if you bought Facebook stocks last week, you know, you're down 30%. Although, you know, Facebook was supposed to be a blue chip technology stock, continuing to grow, everybody encounters a hurdle. You know, sometimes businesses go bankrupt. Sometimes you make bad bets. GameStop is a good example, where there was that hedge fund that was betting against GameStop. They thought that they were going to go bankrupt. And on paper, GameStop should have gone bankrupt. But everybody was betting on GameStop to be successful. And that Mervyn Capital lost $3 billion on that bet. So nothing's ever guaranteed. But I think setting the stage that, hey, you're going to lose money betting on me because I'm in a high risk, high reward scenario. So you got to be comfortable with that. You know, if you invest $10,000, it might turn into 100,000 in a couple of years' time, might turn into nothing, you know, next week if things don't take off. And if the individual is comfortable with that because they've diversified their investments, if that $10,000 check is not going to hamper their lifestyle or, you know, be significant if it's lost, then it's okay. They're willing to take that gamble on you. Startup, it's like a casino. Some people hit it big, some people break even, some people make a little bit of money, but there's a lot of people that come out losing everything that they bet.
Ideally, you want investors who are able to take that up and down.
100%. The last thing you want is an angel investor that's calling you every single day. Well, what were the sales yesterday? What are you doing differently today? Because they're so worried about their investment. You want to find people that, you know, they're not going to bother you. They're going to write you that check and they expect an update, you know, every month in a newsletter or to get a phone call with you every couple of weeks with just a quick, hey, this is what we accomplished. This is what we're doing.
Rahel, over to you. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, you got it. Good job. So my question is just about what you're saying about incorporation. I know you quoted a dollar amount. I've spoken to lawyers, accountants about incorporation, and with the lawyers, a few thousand, accountants, a few hundred. But I also know that incorporation is something we can do on our own. So in your experience, what is the benefit of, and I do understand some of it, but I guess in comparison with a lawyer doing it, accountant doing it, or you yourself doing it, especially if you can make adjustments later and kind of like to save costs earlier, just in your experience, what would you advise?
So we looked at doing it ourselves. My co-founder is a lawyer and I figured, oh, he knows how to do it. But then you start peeling, you know, away all the different layers of forms that you have to fill out. Do you do it provincially? Do you do it federally? You know, developing your minutes book, your shareholder agreement, issuing shares. It all becomes daunting if you've never done it before and scary at the same time. And that's why, you know, you'll go to a lawyer or an accountant to do it, but they're going to have, you know, some markups on it. Not only are you paying their billable hours, even if the cost for filing is $300, they're going to mark that up too and charge you $500 for it. So there was a good service that we found called Owner, OWNR, that disrupts that whole model, that they do it all digitally for you. I think at the time we paid either $450 or $500 to do it. They did it all correctly. It was seamless. We got our corporation number within 15 minutes. Then a week later, all the paperwork came in. And I think if you're an RBC account holder, you do your banking with RBC, there's further discounts that you could get. You can even get a free bank account now because they ended up buying the company owner. So there is a hack to do it for free if you do a little bit of research. And that is what I would recommend, unless you have more intricacies that go into the incorporation. If you need to issue certain shares, you're not comfortable doing it yourself, then you have a lawyer do it. Because I know we're paying the price for it now, kind of using owner to do the incorporation and then not issuing any correct shares and not having proper minute books. We now have to go back and clean up everything, but we were ready to do that because we just wanted to get the business off the ground and running. And we said to ourselves, well, if we're going to be successful, then we're going to have money to pay for the lawyers to come in and do it correctly.
Anything else, Rahel?
Thank you. I wanted to just clarify, you're saying that owner is a good tool. However, it's always better to have somebody who understands how to do it to complete it for you, especially if there's going to be complication with shares and whatnot. Yeah.
If it's very complicated and
Yeah.
there's multiple layers, you already have, 4 different investors and you've brought on another employee that you're issuing equity to, you're likely going to have to do it properly with a lawyer. You can always take those shortcuts, but then you'll be paying for it later, whether it's in 3, 6, 12 months, or even 24 months, it will catch up to you. But
Thank you very much.
No worries. If you just need a quick registration, it's just you as the sole proprietor and you want to incorporate, or you have one partner, you could do it through owner.
Anything else? Awesome. I wanted to ask you, you spend a lot of your time, Darren, raising money for the business, right? And I mean, you've over the last year accelerated revenue forward really fast, and there's a cost to doing that. How much of your time do you spend on actually raising money? Because you're very good at it. You're looking for all different sources, and that takes time.
Well, it comes in waves. So, you encounter those bottlenecks that to get to the next stage or to continue growth, you need to go out and hire, 5 new individuals, or you need to pay for a bigger service. Where are you going to finance that? So you go out to your network. We started out with the angel groups, and that really came out of our accelerator program. The different groups came in. They're like, oh, you came out of this accelerator, come pitch to our groups. And we got excited. We're like, okay, this is going to be easy. The angel groups, in my opinion, not a good choice. They're very risk adverse. They act like venture capitalists. They want safe bets. And, a lot of times they'll say, we'll come back in 3 months' time once you achieve these results. And once you show us that you have, then we'll be more comfortable investing in you. And then something else comes up. Oh, no, now we want to see these targets get hit because we're not in a position to make any more investments. Everybody's going away on Christmas for the holiday season, or they're going up to their cottages in the summer. So angel groups were terrible. VCs, we were just too early for because, again, they're looking to cut those $1 million checks or more. Some of the VCs say that they're more seed focused, that they're looking for early stage. Being a marketplace, it was very difficult to convince those early stage companies because they wanted to see a marketplace be more mature. But then, it's a catch-22. If we're more mature, then we're too big for you and your investment criteria. And then they come back and they say, yeah, you're right. So then you're going to have to go to another VC. The best bet is to find the new angels that are out there, individuals that either sold their business, had some real estate that they were able to cash out on, that they're sitting with a lot of cash right now. They're seeing some returns in the marketplace, but they're okay with doing some bets, writing those $10,000, $20,000 checks. And to be honest, it's probably easier to go out to 10 of those angels. It's going to take a little bit of networking to find them. But if you get 10 checks for $20,000, a lot easier, and you'll give up a lot less equity than going to the angel groups and trying to get a $200,000 check from the group there. And then there's other hacks. If you are in touch with OCI, they can do some matching funding for a seed stage investment so that your 10 investors are 200,000. You go to OCI and they match it with another 200,000. All of a sudden you've raised 400,000 through 10 investors that were okay with betting on you.
Yeah, you're brilliant at it. You talk about networking a bit, and I'm going to circle back to it because you mentioned it earlier and you're raising it again now. And I think there's a lot of talk among entrepreneurs around, how do I build my network? How do I, connect with people? And then there's people who are a little bit introverted, maybe aren't comfortable with it, or maybe culturally they're not, not as comfortable with that concept. So any advice or tips?
Very simple. I mean, COVID has changed the way that we're networking. You can do it from your computer, and people are more open to doing that networking. Before, to get a meeting with certain people, you have to go to their office and sit in their waiting room the entire day and catch them as they're leaving the office. Today, it's so easy to send an email and say, jump on Zoom, give me 10 minutes, and they'll end up doing it. If by nature I'm introverted, I'll walk into a room of people and I'll wait for people to talk to me. But on Zoom, it's a lot easier to be extroverted and talk to people. Right now, I think at some point there were a few dozen people on this call, and to just reach out to somebody in the chat or to add them on LinkedIn after, hey, we were both at the talk that Darren was at. What did you think about him? There's networking right there. People are going to answer that question, because if they were here tonight, they'll want to talk about it because they're probably on a similar journey to you. So although there's a little bit of anxiety of reaching out to somebody you don't know for the very first time, it's so easy to do it in the digital world, because if they don't want to answer you, they'll just not respond to you. But at least you put in the effort of reaching out to them. And you know what? Not everybody will respond to you, but you'll be surprised that your conversion rate, your close rate might be 8 out of 10, might be 9 out of 10.
And like you said earlier, you don't know where those meetings will go, right?
Definitely.
Worth a conversation.
Like Lisa, I'll throw it back to you. If anybody that was here tonight reached out to you, would you take a meeting with them?
100%. I have offered it many times. It's interesting to me though that when you offer it, like even you've offered it, you will put your email on the left slide there and invited people to reach out. In my experience, not many people do. So why not be one of those people who do?
Well, it comes back to passion. If you're really excited about what you're doing, you're going to want to share your story. You're going to want to ask those questions, and then you will reach out, because nothing is stopping. Nothing's getting in your way from that end goal. And so that's why you got to find inside what really ticks, what gets you motivated and out of bed in the morning. And as long as you put that passion first, everything else is secondary. You'll have no problem reaching out to Darren, reaching out to Lisa, or reaching out to anyone else that was here tonight, or anyone else that you dream of. I mean, some people don't think to email Jeff Bezos if they have a great idea. He might respond to you if you
never
reach
know.
out.
Bet you not many people reach out anymore. Yeah.
Exactly.
Darren, you had your email address on your slides. They're no longer up. Could you just quickly drop your email address in the chat window?
Of course.
I do have another question, unless there's any others. Anybody else have a question? All right. Then here it is. You have been really successful in building a great BD team, business development team, sales, marketing, outreach. And that's been a huge part of your success. And of course, you funded that through a lot of subsidies and student hiring, et cetera. But talk to us about the whole BD piece. It's really critical. Business development, for the record. Sorry, I'm referring to it in marketing lingo, but business development is pretty important. Talk to us about that.
I mean, it's critical. Without business development, you don't have a business. And we were extremely, extremely lucky, fortunate to have connected with Asher, who heads up our business development at Spot App. And, we gave him the ball to run with. We had the product that we were building on. And the timing was just right that when he came on, it was still a little bit early, but he had the opportunity to develop his systems, develop his networking, and get an understanding that once we were live and ready to turn the tap on, he made sure that the water was flowing. And for anybody starting their own business, you know, BD comes at the right time. You don't want it to be too early and you don't want it to be too late. But the most important thing is once you turn it on, you don't want to turn it off. It goes back to the old mantra, if you're not growing, you're dying. So once business development starts, you got to be in a position that if 10 new customers want to sign up tomorrow, you're going to know how. There's stages that you could do it that before you turn on the BD taps, you start off small. You have your angel employer or angel customer, I call it, who's going to be doing the testing, trying out your product, really working with you and giving you that feedback that you can find out any of the bugs, any of the kinks, get your operations running as well, because it's not as easy as saying, okay, if I bring on 10 customers, I'll be able to service all of them. There's a lot of learnings that go into it. We made a lot of mistakes with our first, call it 3 customers. We're still making mistakes with customers today, but I look back at some of the critical mistakes that we made. And, you know, I'm very fortunate that they gave us second and third opportunities because they saw what we were building. They believed in us that we could deliver it. And that's the most important thing, because then you kind of, you leverage those testimonials and those customers that have been sticky, that have been with you since day one, to bring on new customers. But you're going to develop that department, and you need to make sure it's treated as a department and it's given the resources that they need, because they will be the most important department within your organization as you go to market and you scale.
I love it. I think that is amazing. This has been a really great session. I have one final question, and that is, if you were to leave this group with advice on, you know, out of all the lessons you've learned over the last, let's say, 18 months, what would one be that you'd want to leave with everybody?
There's a good one that I've probably used so many times that people get tired of hearing it. But it was taught to me at a very early age by one of the executives at Marks and Spencer, which I'm sure most people here don't even know who that is. It's that there's no bad idea, just bad execution. You want to go sell hot dogs on a street corner, you can have a good business doing that, but you got to choose the right street corner. You got to make sure you have the right condiments. You got to make sure your drinks are cold, because if you don't execute on all these different layers, you're not going to be successful. Nobody's going to want to buy that hot dog from you. So spend more time focused on the execution versus the idea. Mohammed, this goes to you. You know, your idea is going to be great, but you got to make sure your execution is better, because that is what's going to stand you out, help you stand out. Because again, probably 100 people have come before you with that idea, but their execution just wasn't successful.
Awesome. Darren, you've benefited from Edge, and I'm going to just do a last plug for Edge, but you've benefited a bit from the resources at Edge. Anything you could tell people about why they might want to get involved?
I mean, list is endless. I probably don't have enough time to talk about it, but if you're on that journey of entrepreneurship and you need that support, Edge does an awesome job that they will identify what the areas are. They've got a lot of advisors as well as some amazing mentors that will jump into the business with you. And whether you need weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings, they're on tap. Most important thing to know about the Edge program is that you're only going to get out of it what you put in. So if you're not asking questions, if you're not participating in the events, then it's probably not for you. But if there's a clear path of what you need, where the holes are, where the bottlenecks are, Edge can definitely help you and put you in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story, your feedback, your suggestions for this group of entrepreneurs on the call. I know when I first started meeting with you, you were, what, I think 10 gigs a day, and these days it's quite a bit faster paced around your venture. So congratulations to you, and thank you for sharing your story here tonight.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you everybody for having me tonight and listening. Again, reach out if there's anything I can do to help. If you just want to network, if there's anybody within my network that you want an introduction to, I'm happy to help and support.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.